At the end, we will talk about, we'll do, some time from Q&A if anybody has any questions. So, be aware of that. But other than that, Jeff and Ronnie, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Excited to be here. Appreciate everyone spending the time with us here for the lunchtime today. So, Rodney, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself first, sir.
Sure. My name is Rodney Sherrick. I'm a senior partner technology strategist working with Rubrik. I work at Microsoft, and really excited to share the partnership with you guys today and have Rubrik show you how they answer your portion of the shared responsibility model.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rodney. Yeah, and Jeff Phipps, I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. I'm the cloud product specialist for Rubrik, and I work with all of our customers, existing and prospective customers, just understand how we help them really, back up and secure their critical cloud data across, IaaS workloads, PaaS workloads, and today we're obviously going to be focused on SaaS workloads being M365. So, what you're seeing here right now is, our agenda. Did some welcomes. We're going to jump into a little bit about, the Microsoft and Rubrik relationship and a little bit more detail around the shared responsibility model. Have Rodney share kind of the view from Microsoft's angle on, what it is and what the responsibilities really are and what you should be doing in order to, be sort of holding up your end from the customer standpoint around the shared responsibility model if you are a 365 customer. I'm going to dive into what we're seeing in the marketplace. Rubrik and Microsoft have over 2,000 joint customers now for 365. And so we talk with a lot of companies across all different types of industries as to, why they're prioritizing this, backing up and securing 365 data, what the impacts could be if 365 is down, what the risks are to 365 data, and what's causing permanent loss today. So we're going to go dive deep into a lot of that and just kind of give you all a view into the marketplace and what's going on around 365 data. And then, we're obviously going to jump into, the joint engineered solution that Microsoft and Rubrik are bringing to market. And I'm going to show you the interface. I'll jump in the interface and, show you around, show you how we actually go in and start to protect your data, how we can execute recoveries, and, talk a little bit about the actual solution and get your eyes on it. So from there, if we've got, some time left at the end, please feel free. We've got folks on our teams who are watching the Q&A side of this. And so we're going to answer as many questions as we can sort of in line during the meeting. But if there's anything we don't get to that you put in the QA, know that we're going to be following up with you all. And so we'll make sure we get any of those questions answered. All right. So without further ado, I want to make sure we jump in. We're just a minute behind, so we're doing quite well on timing here. First, just wanted to start here and, share that, Microsoft, they're really laser focused in on cybersecurity. You can see here, this was a large meeting of the technology minds and leaders of the world with, President Joe Biden. And really what they were talking about is just, the kind of the state of what we're having to deal with from a cybersecurity perspective. Really the big thing that came out of this, meeting of these technology leaders with the US government and POTUS was, you can see here in the bottom right, Mr. Nadella actually, posted up on Twitter from a Microsoft perspective saying, hey, we're very serious about this. We want to help. And, this is a massive issue from a kind of cyber perspective that we're all having to deal with. All of our customers are having to deal with. And so, they want to go to invest $20 billion to improve security solutions over sort of a 5-year time frame. So this was, pretty amazing. And then, everyone else sort of fell in line behind Microsoft, making commitments around programs and obviously dollars and resources. This was really big. So, Microsoft is extremely focused on cybersecurity. Rodney, anything that you'd add here from, a Microsoft perspective as it relates to this program?
No, not much other than, our vision is to empower everyone to be able to achieve more, right? And we want to, you could almost amend that with safely, right? So we want everyone to be able to bring new ideas, bring new things to the market, and share new technology, build amazing new things, and do it safely, and know that, they are safe, and that it's a very, very dynamic world. And so we are investing quite a bit in making sure that it's as safe as we can be, and constantly keeping up with the arms race and trying to stay ahead.
Yeah, 100%. And as a, kind of one of the facets of this investment into cybersecurity is obviously the partnership that's come about between Microsoft and Rubrik. So for everyone here on the line, just so you're aware, this is a snippet from, I believe it was a Bloomberg article. There are several that are out there about this, but it talked about how Microsoft and Rubrik really came together to form a strategic partnership in the cybersecurity space, really specifically around data protection, data security, backups in the cloud. Rodney, would love your kind of insights on the partnership too, from your angle.
Sure. So the partnership is, we did take an equity stake in Rubrik in 2021, but more than putting the money in, we're also putting in the time and the efforts, right? So as part of my role, it's not only just to help share the story of Rubrik and the work that you guys do and how you help customers, but also to help you build those and help you ideate new solutions and come up with new things. So as part of the deep relationship, I'm regularly involved in engineering meetings, bringing in cloud solution architects, bringing in product managers, not only to make the new things, to protect new things, to help guard against new threats, but also looking back at the solutions you've already built, making sure they're still using the latest APIs, for example, that you're still following best practices and making sure that the stuff you already have stays up to date, current, and safe, and the new products and the new solutions that we bring to the market together follow those just as well.
Yeah. 100%. And, couple, just going a layer or two deeper in terms of the relationship, as Rodney was saying, we have a very deep relationship. There was the equity investment, but moreover than that, we've got weekly engineering cadence calls between our team as well as Microsoft engineering resources who are dedicated to helping to work together on our joint products that we bring to market. And we've got a multi-year joint product roadmap as well. So we've got several actually joint built solutions for Azure, for M365, but obviously what we're going to be focusing in on today is our Microsoft 365 offering. But for anyone who's on the phone, obviously if you're thinking about, how do we protect, how do we secure that data in 365, also know that, if you're doing a lot in Azure, you're starting to deploy more of those cloud native services, cloud VMs, disks, SQL in Azure, maybe even got a VMware deployment on Azure. We're seeing a lot of, organizations start to migrate those on-prem workloads and then, either refactor or just redeploy on top of Azure services. We can, go out there and help with all of those critical workloads as well. And the last piece to add here is that, we're seeing a lot more organizations as they're going in, deeper with Microsoft. They're doing much more, across these various cloud services. They're having pretty substantial contracts with Microsoft too. And so if you have a Mac contract, know that, the solutions, at least, the ones that we're talking about today, with 365 can absolutely be procured through the Azure marketplace as well and help to decrement those Mac contracts if your organization is one of those, larger contracted customers with Microsoft. So, so that's a little bit about the relationship. We've got a very deep relationship. We're focused really on bringing resiliency to the data layer inside of your cloud data across those various services. And what we're going to kind of start diving into now is a little bit more around the shared responsibility model. What does the customer need to understand in terms of, data protection, data security, data backup, and then, really dive into a little bit more around what we're seeing in the marketplace, what's causing permanent data loss and why this is a risk for anyone who's out there right now who's using 365, heavily within their organization and they're not backing it up right now. We're going to kind of dive into what's causing, what's the risk around the data loss and what's causing those things. So Rodney, I'd love for you to jump in here. I always like share, this is one of the very first visuals I always share with folks when we're talking about 365 protection, because for most of the customers we talk to, they've migrated into 365, and I saw the poll, a large amount of the people who are on this call today have migrated. It looks about 3/4. But if they haven't, they're talking about it right now, right? And they're about to go into the cloud. They're going to do on-prem into 365 SaaS for all sorts of, valuable business reasons. But when we talk to them, they have this assumption in their head that, well, Microsoft's providing our service, they've got the infrastructure, they have, all of the security around, what's traditionally being, handled by the customer in a data center perspective. They must be backing up our data too, right? And going through all of that. And the shared responsibility model actually speaks differently to this. So I'd love your view on this piece.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So part of the migration to the cloud is exactly what you said, right? I don't have to worry about patching servers. I don't need to get the latest firmware. I don't need to worry about my disk arrays dying over a certain amount of time and updating them.
Yeah.
And we work very hard to make sure that all of the services are up as much as humanly possible, right? I mean, we still have the laws of physics, of course, but we have a lot of methods in place to make sure that Teams is up as long as possible, Exchange, all of these pieces. But the data has always been the responsibility of the customer because for many reasons, right? One of the biggest ones is we don't know what data is important to you or not, right? And we can't see the data unless you give us access to it. We're not able to read what you have stored in wherever you have it stored. So managing that has always been the responsibility of the customers. We'll make sure that the services are on, the lights are on, the networking's running. We'll keep, for example, on Teams, we have multiple copies of your data. But having multiple copies is not a backup strategy, right? It's just a high availability and gives you some resiliency. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, we found out there's this message from 2 years ago that's got, contract data in it. We need to get that back. It was deleted. We don't have multiple copies of it anymore because it was deleted, right? And so that's why Rubrik is here to talk about, managing your data so that you know what's important. You can protect it, keep it backed up, archived, whatever was important for your business. And then they also have bonus features, I like to call them, but that's part of the really big value of Rubrik, right? Is the ransomware, right? Being aware of what am I restoring and is it safe to restore it, right? Am I just reinfecting myself or have I got something new? Or safe, sorry.
No, for sure. And what we'll do here as part of this, just for everyone on the phone, is we are going to dive into, what native recovery capabilities you have as part of the suite today, and really where the limitations are, and with how those things were built, and specifically the use cases they were built for, and why it's so important, and to have a third-party backup in here, ensuring that data can be recovered, from last month, from 2 years ago, from 20 years ago, whatever it may be, right? So kind of moving forward, what we're seeing in the field a lot is, again, since COVID, 365 is just like crazily expanded. I mean, it's outrageous growth, pretty incredible. And it makes sense, right? It was the number one used, collaboration communication platform in the world prior to COVID. And then we all got locked in our homes, right? So we had to go online, had to use the internet, and so that really accelerated the adoption of 365 in, across industries, across our customers, for sure. We talked to everyone and they said COVID was the biggest, factor in terms of accelerating that adoption of 365 and that migration there. And so what we're seeing is like, it's not just like, me and Rodney exchanging emails now and, sending some Teams chats about what we're doing this weekend and all that. These applications are business critical. I was talking with one of our customers yesterday and they said, they just rebuilt their entire intranet 2.0 on top of SharePoint. It's all back-ended by SharePoint, the whole thing. It took them 6 or 7 months to, create the whole structure and to migrate off of their legacy piece and all of that good stuff. And so, if that data was gone, not only would it cause serious business disruption just day to day with all of the workflows that go through their intranet, like, how they interact with their suppliers, how they order products for their customers. I mean, it was a long list of pretty critical business processes that are tied into SharePoint. And, if that data had been gone, it would cause significant business disruption measured in the tens of millions of dollars easily just for being down, a few days. And so, that ability to be able to back up and ensure that data is secure and that you could rapidly recover it, is absolutely business critical for a lot of organizations today because 365 has become, so woven into these business processes. But most customers we talk to up here in the top right, they're just not protecting it outside of the native tools today, right? And so something I always like to share as well is, when we start talking about, well, what's really causing data loss, in 365 today? Well, just like what's causing data loss, for other critical systems, cyber attacks are the number one DR event that we're all having to deal with, right? It's not just floods and fires and natural disasters and meteors and whatever else it may be, right? we're constantly being inundated. Customers are with cyber attacks day in, day out, constantly. CISA put this alert out. This was, I believe, in April-ish timeframe of last year or so. Might have been a little bit before that, but what they had seen is obviously CISA, they've got a pretty close heartbeat on what's happening from a cyber perspective globally. And what they had seen is the increase in sophistication of attacks as well as volume of attacks against organizations who have widely deployed 365, right? So 365 is becoming a pretty critical and prioritized attack vector by cyber gangs because the data is valuable. I mean, why do robbers rob a bank? Because that's where the money is, right? Same thing with 365. It's not just, cyber attackers aren't just going to fish to try to get into other systems through 365. They're actually going directly after that data now because it's so business critical. And we're seeing this happen all the time. I always like to share real world examples of where this has happened. IHG, Intercontinental Hotel Groups, they got hit. This was, I think, September-ish timeframe last year. But a couple in Vietnam, unsophisticated, not part of a big cyber gang like Revel or Blapsys or any of these other ones that people know. They were using open source automation tools around like ransomware as a service and like brute force attack for passwords. They're using these automation tools that are freely available to them. And they were able to get into IHG using that automated brute force password attack system. And the password that got through was QWERTY12345. It's like super simple, easy password. They were able to get in. They were able to traverse 365 and get to some pretty sensitive information, C-suite and board level emails and Teams chats. So really critical information. They went to go launch a ransomware attack, kind of your traditional encryption type of vector. And luckily, IHG was able to stop those attacks. So they switched to a wiper attack, which was they just started deleting data left, right, and center. If you guys aren't going to pay us our ransom, fine. We're going to cause absolute havoc for you guys and just start deleting data left, right, center. So, this was something that happened pretty recently. We're seeing more of these things happen. The one over here on the right, I always like to share too, because it's not just like the external threats, not just cyber threats we're talking about, but it's internal stuff too that causes data loss. It could be Jeff over here hitting shift delete on accident against my mailbox and deleting everything. It could be issues with maybe a retention policy that gets set up incorrectly, and that's exactly what happened here actually on this one. This was KPMG, where they had about 140,000 users in their tenant, and accidentally made a mistake on the retention policy. It got moved up to a day, and it deleted their Teams chats again. With a company like KPMG, Teams wasn't just you and I talking back and forth, but it was woven into like some of their critical projects, how they did customer billing. It caused a lot of issues, and they couldn't recover it. Microsoft wasn't able to bring the data back for them because they're not backing it up. And then obviously the native tools with retention policy and litigation hold, they're not meant for mass restores, and they're really meant to help you manage your data and the life cycle of your data versus being able to protect it, recover it if it's lost for some reason. And then one other story I wanted to share here, I actually put it in the chat before everyone hopped on, so it should be in the chat, but Capita, they were just hit as well. And the attack was directly after their Office 365 apps. So it caused some serious business disruption. The link's in there. I don't want to take too much time on this reviewing it today, but certainly go in and check this out and read about this, because this is another super recent example. I mean, it was like 2 weeks ago that they got hit, and it caused some serious business disruption because 365 data was compromised and they weren't able to, get critical systems back online. So, kind of coming back here again, it's internal threats that are causing data loss. It's external threats. We're seeing it all over the place. It could be accidental user deletions, cyber attacks, just misconfiguration errors. But really, for most clients, they're trying to answer these questions now as it relates to 365. Like if we're hit by ransomware, or a cyber attack in general, or if, our critical data is accidentally deleted, or we've got a rogue admin or something internally, whatever's causing the data loss, like how do we recover? How do we ensure we've got a secure copy of our critical data and that we can always bring it back regardless of what's there? And in order to understand kind of what the native tools provide to you, we wanted to dive in a little deeper there so that you can kind of understand what they are, how they're built, what they're used for, and really, why there's a need for additional capabilities, above and beyond what's in the native suite, right? So I wanted to build this out. This is directly outside of the, again, Microsoft documentation, but, it really comes down to, when you talk about data management with with Microsoft 365, there's kind of four major areas or pillars, right? They provide you capabilities to understand your data across your hybrid landscape. They give you tools to protect your data. There's things like being able to encrypt your data, provide access restrictions to ensure that, Jeff here in the US can't see, Europe-based data, or maybe I can only see the marketing data, not finance, et cetera. All kinds of tools to prevent data loss. They have their own sensitive data discovery and Azure information protection. There's a whole suite of tools here. When it comes to being able to recover your data, though, what you're really provided with are governance and compliance tools. And what I'm talking about here is your retention policy, your litigation hold, and your recycling bin, which is kind of there for, oopsie daisy, I hit, a soft delete. I want to be able to bring that file back, right? That's really what those things were built for. But those are the only capabilities inside of the native tool suite, which provides you any ability to recover your data. And so, Rodney, I love having you jump in here and talk a little bit more around retention policy and litigation hold. Like, what were these really built for? What are they used for today? And what are the limitations in terms of, data lifecycle that these tools may have?
Sure. So, the litigation hold, right, is you get a set of terms that you need to go and find and hold that data. So you go and you find the data and you hold on to it, and you can prevent any sort of loss, right? The user may they may think they've deleted it, but it's being held in the back end. But say you get further on down in the discovery and you're like, oh, we don't need the stuff that has this anymore. So you let that go, and the user, delete, they may or may not be aware of a legal hold, and they've deleted stuff and you've released it from a legal hold. But then as you get further into the case, you find out, oh, there was this one piece that we did actually still need. Let's go back and grab that. Well, it's been deleted, right? So the legal hold will hold it for as long as you want, but it can't restore things that have been deleted before the legal hold, or if the changes had happened in the search terms. I mean, you could potentially have everything in your entire organization set to a legal hold, but it's not really practical or feasible or really even manageable, right? So that's not a great way to save and hold on to data. And retention policy is the same thing. Like you had in your one example, not all mistakes are malicious, or not all damage is malicious. Sometimes people make mistakes, and policies are easy to make a change on, and stuff falls in and out of the policies, and now you've lost data, right? And you can't go get that back. Policies don't restore data. At Microsoft, we will do a best efforts to try to help you restore the data, but we have no SLAs on that, right? We have no guarantees. It's a best efforts in every case when it's trying to restore customer data. So you have these compliance regulatory tools to help you with those sorts of things, but they're not a backup strategy, right? They're not a protection strategy for keeping the data that you need for as long as you need it.
Yeah, 100%, Rodney. The way that I always, kind of talk with folks about it is retention policy is like data lifecycle management, right? Keep what we need for as long as we need it, as long as the business defines and requires, and then roll that stuff out, because it costs money to hold on to it. One, and then there could be, certain types of liability or circumstances, regulatory concerns, compliance concerns that your company may, be exposed to if you are holding on to data that you really shouldn't be, for sure, depending on industries, PII, things of that nature, sure. Right. So, and to your point, these tools were not built with recovery in mind, or rapid recovery, or mass recovery in mind, right, which is what we're seeing as becoming kind of the crux. It's not just having a backup and ensuring that data is there, but our customers are needing to use these backups. So they're only good as, how fast and how performant they are from a recovery perspective, right? So the other thing that I like to mention here is what we're seeing in the wild in terms of, specifically cyber attacks is, what's nice about being in the SaaS world is, as a customer, you manage the identity and authentication layers, right? Your Microsoft native tools give you all sorts of layers underneath to provide you resiliency around the data, help to keep the bad actors out, and then all of the former endpoint security, things of that nature, all of the maintenance, all that stuff's handled for you by Microsoft, which is fantastic, right? And what we're really seeing is that identity and authentication layers are being bypassed. That example that I was showing you there for that last company that was hit, they not only was their identity layer breached, but the MFA layer was also breached, right? And so people are getting sophisticated. They're finding ways around these things. And so most of our customers now are having an assume breach mindset. And we've got a pretty good handle on how these modern attacks really play out as it relates to 365, because we've got a ransomware response team that's part of our service to our customers. If you're a customer of Rubrik and protecting any of your data, you actually have access to our ransomware response team, where you could pick up the phone 1-800-Rubrik if you're under attack, and we will stay on the line with you, help you leverage the technology to recover as quickly as possible. And these are support expertise SMEs that have been through these types of attack. And it's not just about using the technology to recover your data, but they know all of the sort of potholes that you may run into from a recovery perspective, and can help guide you and point you along the way, and work with all the other teams that get involved when you do get hit by a cyber attack, right? So again, we've got over 5,000 customers now globally, and I know that we've helped well over 10% actually recover from a sophisticated cyber attack. So again, we've got a really good feel for like how these actually play out in the wild. So like, the way that this works is core perimeter defenses, they're breached somehow, right? There's phishing, there's MFA, there's stolen credentials, there's a million ways in. What bad actors are trying to do is gain privileged access. We need to get to certain user profiles where they have access to use a lot of those native tools within 365 so that they can control your ability to recover your data. It's sort of the same attack mentality that happens in the data center, but now in the cloud world, right? How are they protecting their data? Where are they protecting it? And what are those tools that we can get access to go compromise those things, right? Once they're able to get privileged access, they start exfiltrating data, deleting it, encrypting it, name your flavor of attack, and then bam, right? Customers hit with a ransomware note. And we see this happen all the time. Microsoft actually talked about how Lapsus Group, what really well-known group, has been taking this exact type of attack vector. And this was on their security blog. I think it was February or March of last year, they were talking about this. So, Microsoft's talking about it. Obviously, the US government's talking about it. Everyone's talking about this. But, once the ransomware note hits, customers are sitting there going, well, how can we recover? What are we able to do? Because the data's gone, we need to bring it back. Well, let's try to restore it from the retention policy. If the bad actor does have that privileged access, they can actually take the retention policy and just move it up to a day. It's going to delete everything else that's in there. So it's unfortunate that, cyber attackers have found ways to start to leverage these tools against folks. Well, the other way is, to Rodney's point, well, we do have at least our executives email on Lithold, right? Maybe we can bring that back and start to bring back at least some of our data. The problem is legal hold wasn't meant for recovery, not mass recovery, not rapid recovery. And so it takes time in order to use it. Even if it's a small amount of data, a couple of users, it could still take you days, right? And so if you've got a tenant that's hundreds of users, even thousands of users, especially tens of thousands of users, trying to bring back a large amount of data using Lithold would just be unacceptable from a recovery standpoint, right? And so, as Rodney was saying, call Microsoft. They'll do what's called a best effort recovery. They can recover you up to 14 days in the past, but that's also continuous and rolling. So as time goes on, as days go on, that window gets shorter and shorter. And so if you need data that goes on beyond that, they're more than likely not going to be able to help restore that data. And so, if you're just depending on those native tools as kind of your recovery strategy, whether it's a cyber attack or, again, accidental deletion internally, most folks are left with permanent data loss, or in a cyber attack having to pay the bad guys, unfortunately. And so this is really the big reason why we're seeing a lot of customers prioritize this protection. 365 is business critical, and it is absolutely subject to permanent data loss in these types of scenarios. A couple of things I also like to point out here, which are really, kind of directly from the Microsoft standpoint too. Rodney would love your view here. But when you, again, talk about shared responsibility in the cloud, they actually have a step-by-step process to recover from a ransomware event in 365. I think it's like a 9-step process or something. But I always like to point out the first step that they suggest is verify your backups, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have offline backups, right? Kind of best practice that we did in the data center as well. Don't have your backups sitting on your network where a bad actor is going to be able to see it, compromise it. Get those backups offline, have an air gap so that even if your tenant is fully compromised, you're not going to be able to find those things. You're not going to be able to compromise them, right? That's the first piece I always like to point out, because if you have those offline backups and you can have a clean tenant to restore to, then you're going to be able to bring that data back, right? The other piece here is around the service availability piece, and this goes back to Rodney, what you're saying around SLAs, right? Microsoft provides you, 3 nines of SLAs across the 365 apps, and it goes deeper depending on, the individual applications. But the service availability is, we're always going to keep this thing up and running. You always have access to the service. However, you really need to back up your content, right? Any data you're creating inside of these services, you need to be using a third-party application to back that data up, because right, they're not part of the native tool suite. That's really what it comes down to. So I always like to kind of point these out. Rodney, didn't know if you had anything you wanted to share on these points as well from a Microsoft standpoint.
Just that, the tools that we've already talked about to help you identify what data is important to you, what do you need to hold on to for regulatory or compliance reasons. We can help you do all of those things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the customer's responsibility to make sure that data is available in any scenario, right? Disaster or not, right? We'll keep the lights on. You furnish the house.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like that. Yep. And so, this is where we really play, is improving your defense and depth strategy, right? Adding more layers, giving more resiliency specifically to the data, and assuming breach. If all of these layers have been compromised, we still want to be able to be there for you from a Rubrik perspective and help you recover. That's really where we come in. And so we're not, replacing anything that you're getting in the Microsoft native tool suite. That's not our goal here, right? Why would we go and try to recreate something and make it a little bit better of a mousetrap? There's not really a whole lot of value add there for customers or for Microsoft. Where we've really focused is, where are the potential data security gaps as it relates to SaaS data in 365? And how can Rubrik take what we've done since 2014 in the data center and bring, those zero trust principles and capabilities we've built into our platform to ensure that your 365 data is as secure as, other critical assets that we may be helping you protect. And so what we're doing is providing you air gap security. We're giving you the capability to recover data, either granular recoveries, like Jeff needs to get some files back out of OneDrive or some emails, or we need to bring back a SharePoint site or whatever it may be, to mass recovery, right? We've got thousands of users who have been affected by a mistake, by an attack. How do we bring that data back as quickly as possible to reduce, our business downtime? If our entire finance team doesn't have any of their, Excel files, if our go-to-market teams in sales and marketing don't have any of their business data that sits in, across M365 apps, if, any of our critical workflows across SharePoint are not able to operate because there's no fuel in the tank, there's no data for them to actually operate on, can be a pretty serious business disruption, right? So fast and rapid recovery is really, really key. And then the last piece is, for anyone who hasn't seen Rubrik before, it's dead simple to use. We came into the market in 2014, like I'd mentioned, and the first thing we really focused on was trying to just make backup simple. You shouldn't have to sit there in a complex environment and have to, babysit backup jobs. So we do what's called SLA protection. You define your service level agreement with the business, right? How often do you need to have this data backed up? How long does this data need to be available for recovery? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 2 months, whatever it may be, right? And then, how fast can we recover this data for our customers? We define these things inside of our SLA policy and then make it easy for you to deploy this protection across even a very, very large 365 tenant. I mean, we've got customers who are literally in the 300,000 plus user range protecting their data and their tenants with 365 today, which is pretty amazing. So, again, just like I was saying before, when all of these layers, do get breached, Rubrik's there to ensure that, hey, the data is protected, it's safe, it's recoverable, and we can bring it back even in the worst case scenario of a sophisticated and coordinated cyber attack, right? That's what we're here for. So I'm going to dive into a little bit more around kind of the architecture of the solution now, talk to you about kind of how it works, how we've, really co-engineered this with Microsoft to give us some capabilities which are extremely valuable just from a performance standpoint. So I'm going to kind of dive into there and sort of set the stage for the demonstration. So I'll talk to you about what the solution is, how it works, all that goodness, some of the major capabilities around, recovery performance, data resiliency, and then I'll give you the tour, so to speak, of the house, right? So, starting first off, the solution that we've built here is fully SaaS based. right? We didn't want to try to take what we've done from an IP perspective on-prem and then try to kind of refactor it for the cloud. We wanted to build this cloud native from the get-go. And so that's exactly what we've done. We've actually built our backup service on top of Azure. And so what happens here is, if you are managing your company's 365 tenant, the only thing you have to do in order to kick off the deployment with Rubrik to protect that data is establish a connection. And so there's no infrastructure for your team to deploy. There's no storage resources. There's no compute resources. Fully managed backup from Rubrik. We manage all of these components for you. All you have to do is establish that connection and bless Rubrik using modern authentication. We never, see username and passwords. We never store those anywhere. There's no VM proxy servers that, this data is going to be sitting on. It's all done through modern OAuth. These are, again, just part of our principles around zero trust when we go to build our product. And so we use modern OAuth in order to establish that connection. Once that connection is established, Rubrik will go in and auto-discover all of the objects that you have across Exchange, OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. And then once all of that auto-discovery has been done, then you're ready to deploy SLA protection. You define that SLA. Hey, I want to take, a snapshot of this data, once a day and keep it for 30 days. And then an additional one that we take every week and we keep for 5 years, or however you need to based on your requirements. We make defining that protection and deploying that protection very easily. And then it's all automated from there. Right? We've built automation into all of, this componentry to ensure that you're not having to sit there and babysit, backup jobs or recovery jobs, especially if you've got, tenants with thousands of users in it. So very, very secure architecture here. When we actually start taking those backups of your data, the way that we're doing this, we're taking a first full backup and then it's incremental forever, right? This data gets stored inside of an Azure tenant that Rubrik's hosting, and it's dedicated specifically to you as a customer. So there's no shared tenancy between you and our thousands of other customers who are using this service today. And then we leverage all of the goodness around, Azure and the infrastructure capabilities that they have by actually replicating your data 3 times using ZRS, which is zone redundant storage, to where your data is actually, that backup data in that initial Azure data center is actually replicated 2 other times. And this is really meant for, hey, if data center A goes down, we want to make sure that there's reliability in that data so that we can continue to bring it back. So we're able to use all that goodness. But this is super easy to deploy. Because the architecture is built cloud native, our customers can get this up and running in 30 minutes, right? And I'm probably being generous, to be totally frank with you. So kind of stepping down into the resiliency features that we provide out of box. This is just standard part and parcel part of the platform here at Rubrik. I've already explained the air gap. Again, the 365 data centers are actually completely separate, physically separate and different data centers than what's in Azure. So you are getting a real air gap there in terms of taking your data out of 365 and putting it into an Azure tenant. And there's no egress or ingress fees that are associated with that as well. The next piece is we encrypt data everywhere, right? Whenever we're touching data, it's encrypted at flight or in flight and at rest. And then it's also immutable by design on our first backup. So when we write that backup initially into Azure, it's immutable right out of the gate. Immutability for us is not something that you can configure. It's not something that you can turn off. It is how we store your backups in an immutable state right from the get-go. Again, I had mentioned it's our first full, and then we have a incremental forever. And it's when we write those backups, it's in our proprietary append-only file system as well. The next piece that's really important here from sort of an operational perspective as well as security is access control. And so we've got granular role-based access control within our platform, which is really, really critical because, a lot of times we're working with an infrastructure team who owns, evaluations of technologies, sort of the deployments and connectivity of those technologies. But the, recovery process for 365 could be owned by a specific collaboration team. We're working with M365 application owner teams, the collaboration and communication team. We're working with help desks as well, because a lot of times recoveries will get routed through IT, help desk and service tickets. So being able to define the roles within Rubrik easily so that many different types of groups and users can access the system and use it for what they need it for, super critical, especially in large organizations. And so we've got granular RBAC. And then some security controls that we have in terms of accessing our system are we have natively enforced multi-factored authentication, as well as time-based one-time passwords. So even if somebody, your 365 tenant's fully compromised, they know somehow that Rubrik, is what's protecting it, and they were able to get to, the login screen of your specific, Azure tenant where your backups are listed, they're still going to have to break through multiple authentication layers just to get into the Rubrik system itself, right? And even if all of those things failed, and they wanted to do something like change a retention on one of your existing backups in Rubrik, they had that level of permission. Well, it's your data. You're using Rubrik as a service. We're going to allow you to do what you want with the data and those backups. If you need to change a retention policy, totally good, up to you. But we see that as a potential malicious act. And so we actually have an extra step to where if you want to go change a retention policy on your backups, you have to do the two-person, nuclear switch, turning the keys at the same time, so that we can ensure that it's not, Rodney over here who's upset with the company and going to go, mess up all the backups as he's leaving. We want to make sure that that scenario never happens to any of our customers. And so that's why we have the retention lock as well. Some of the things that are coming to the product here, some of the roadmap items that we're, again, working very closely with Microsoft on are, we have observability capabilities that exist within our platform today. They're actually first brought into the wild, so to speak, in 2017 for our customers who use us for data center, right? Protecting their, virtualized environments, their databases, applications. They needed the ability to, one, be able to search through their backups to understand where sensitive data may be existing so that they can go and remediate and ensure that that data isn't out there so that it can't be compromised, and so that they can also stay within compliance. This is really big. We're going to be bringing this into 365 here by the end of this year. So this is in late stage beta today, should be GA by the end of the year. But this is going to give customers the ability to, again, scan their 365 backups using Rubrik to say, hey, where does PCI information exist? Where does social security numbers exist? Where does, XYZ type of sensitive information exist? And even give you the ability to create your own analyzers using regex, because you may have something that's specific to your industry or your company that may be really sensitive information that you want to go create an analyzer for, and then be able to find that data across 365. One of the examples I got literally yesterday was a finance company, and they wanted to be able to understand where loan mortgage numbers were existing inside of 365 environment, because that's sensitive information to them. So that's coming later on this year. And then ransomware monitoring investigation is huge. Our customers, when they started getting hit back in 2017 by ransomware, they could recover using Rubrik because we were immutable by design, but they would reinfect themselves. And so again, this is why we had developed these capabilities to help our customers really deal with the issues that they were having to deal with from a recovery perspective. And reinfecting themselves with malware was the number one issue. With ransomware monitoring and investigation, we're going to be able to look at those backups across time and say, hey, this point in time is where the malware payload was actually, when it entered into our environment. And this is kind of the blast radius around that malware payload that says, these are the systems, applications, data that were affected by it. We need to actually recover at this point in time, because the malware payload won't be there. We can quarantine all of this and ensure that we can recover without actually reinfecting ourselves again. So these are really, really critical capabilities that our customers are looking for from an observability perspective, and they're going to be in the product here by the end of the year, which is exciting. So that was it in terms of the slides and the presentation. Again, I think we're pretty close to time. We're just 2 minutes over. What we wanted to do now is just give you a tour of the product, show you what it looks like. So if I can get a quick confirmation, Rodney, can you see the 365 Rubrik screen here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure everyone was seeing the same thing. So this is the 365 protection dashboard for Rubrik inside of our interface, which is called Rubrik Security Cloud, or RSC. You might hear it referred to. But as you can see here, we can protect all different sorts of things. Stuff that's in your data center. We have obviously 365. This demo environment is pretty small, so to speak, because we wanted to focus just on 365. But we can, again, protect workloads across the data center. You're inside of Azure as well as 365. But I'm going to give you a tour of this piece first, and then I'm going to talk to you about how we can actually get that connection established, show you how to define and deploy an SLA, and then show you a recovery process too. And I think that should take us up just pretty close to time. So what you're seeing here, I'll start here on the left-hand side, kind of move right, but we give you a card first, which just gives you a quick check on the 365 service. So, hey, is the 365 service up and running? And the reason why we've put this card in here for our customers is because when you come here to the middle, you see this giant compliance ring. And what compliance means to us is, hey, per the SLA policy that you've deployed across this data, across these objects, where have we been successful and where have jobs failed? Again, this is all automated, right? And so when jobs are out, or when objects are out of compliance, they weren't backed up for whatever reason, the service was down, the APIs, weren't working properly, whatever it may be, we have that auto healing automation already built into the products. We're going to continue to retry continuously until we get that object into compliance, making sure that it's protected. Now, this is really nice too, because you can also just pinpoint where exactly any failures may be and be able to dive into those details and go remediate things that may be happening. You can see here on the data discovery piece, again, this was that beta feature that we're going to get into the product later this year, but this is going to give you a high level look at, hey, we're continuously monitoring our environment for sensitive data across 365. This is going to show you where those sensitive potential hits are so that you can investigate and remediate those things as needed. As you come down here, you'll see by individual application, pretty much the same kind of statistical information you're getting here from the compliance ring, but just at the individual application level, right? So this is the dashboard you'd log into every day just to get a good view as to how your backups are operating through Rubrik for 365. To get to this screen, all you need to do is add a subscription, right? So again, we will spin the Azure tenant up and the RRC data or management plane up for you. And then all you have to do is establish that connection. And the way that you do that is you hit add subscription here. You select the Azure region where you're going to want your backups to live. And we have multi-geo support. So if you've got Germany data needs to stay in Germany, no problem. US data stays in US. We can handle that today, no issues. That way you can stay compliant with GDPR. But all you have to do is just select that region and then authorize the access, right? And that's it. I'm not going to add a subscription here because I don't have one to add, but it's a couple of clicks and then that auto discovery process, kicks off and allows Rubrik to go in and see those objects and then prepare you to deploy protection against them, which is the next step. I'm going to hit assign SLA domain, and typically what we see our customers do is they'll throw a kind of a catch-all SLA domain at the top to ensure that, hey, as data is created, as new users come into our tenant, as they create new data in these apps, like we want a baseline level of protection. And so they'll typically select all the apps at the high level here and then deploy a SLA that is that catch-all. And we've got some that are already deployed or already defined here, our gold, which is, take a snapshot every 4 hours, keep it for 2 years. But you can see here, it's really simple just to set up. What you need to do is just define your frequency, define your retention, and you're off and running. So if I hit create, you can see all kinds of workloads that we can protect for you, right? But if I were to go into 365 by itself, hit next, you can see all I need to do is define those two things, right? How often are we, taking these snapshots, and then how long are we retaining them for? And something to note here is that as part of our service is we provide you unlimited retention of this data. So there's no consequence if you need to hold on to this data for 5 years or 10 years or 90 years. At least from a storage and cost and licensing perspective, it's never going to cost you more to hold on to it longer. And that, again, kind of goes back to our deep relationship with Microsoft, right? So you would define this SLA, you would deploy it against the applications there, and then you're off and running. Rubrik takes care of all of that, what was manual job work and just automates it all through our SLA policies, which is pretty amazing. Now, if I need to recover something, right? Because recoveries or your backups are only good as you can recover them, right? If I jump in here to the actual recovery kind of screens here, another thing that we've seen customers do is they'll deploy protection at maybe a group level as well. So you can deploy one at kind of the umbrella level and then go into maybe there's a specific set of users, your VIP users inside an organization where you need to have a more stringent SLA policy applied. You can do that here at the group level. But if I needed to actually go and recover some data, let's say, right? When I'm in the users tab here, you can see I can flip between OneDrive and Exchange, which makes sense, right? User data is between these two. When you need to go recover other data from like, recover a SharePoint site or, maybe Teams chats, they have their own individual tabs here as well. And you'll see all of your, SharePoint libraries, the URL, the site collections. And then from a team standpoint, we protect Teams chats, channels, things of that nature. So you can see all of your, the names of the channels here and the members and all that good stuff. So a little bit different of a view, but the overall process is like 99% the same. I'm going to go in here to a user and go recover some files from OneDrive, right? So I go into OneDrive, click here, click the little radio button. You can see I've got all of our users inside of our tenant here. I can click into Aaron Smith, and then this brings me to our calendar view. And what our calendar view does is it shows us all these green check marks where snapshots have been taken that we can actually go and recover data from. So I just clicked, today. Looks like we did take one. I don't know why 6:15 was showing, but it looks like we took one. When I hover over it, recover comes up as an option. When I hit recover here, it brings me back into that wizard-driven process, right? You can see everything kind of feels and looks the same, all right? What I can do is either traverse the hierarchy of this user's OneDrive system, where I can just kind of drill down and go, in through the folder structure to get to the data that I need. But something that's really powerful here is when Rubrik is taking your data out of your 365 tenant and backing it up inside of Azure, we're actually indexing all of the metadata as well. And what that does for you is allow really, really fast granular recoveries using search. So if I needed to search just by, like a document's name, I could just type test in here, and it's going to bring up any document name within this user's OneDrive where test is coming up, right? Just to be totally candid and clear, this is not e-discovery. We're not searching the contents of anything that's in here. We're searching the file extensions, the file names, as well as for like email, we're doing the same subject lines. We're not going in and doing any sort of e-discovery where we're actually analyzing the contents of this specific data in order to get to it, because one, Microsoft provides e-discovery for you. We didn't want to, compete against them with certain capabilities that didn't make sense on. And two, this is really built for recovery purposes, right? And we need to find data quickly and then be able to bring that data back. So what I could do is I could, select one file or many files. I can hit next here, and then it gives you the, instructions to tell you where to recover it to. Are we bringing it to the original user? Are we recovering it maybe to a manager, right? Maybe this person left and we need to, bring it back to their manager, or do we need to download this data as well and have it locally for whatever reasons may be? I'm going to recover to the existing user. Go ahead and hit recovery. You can see we get a little pop-up here on the bottom left that says, hey, your job kicked off, it's running. If we go into our events tab, this actually shows us what jobs are running, what jobs have been run, and it gives us details around, what objects were restored, who was the user, how long did it take, when did it happen. Literally every action inside of RSC, the Rubrik Security Cloud here, is logged. And that makes sense. That you may think, well, why wouldn't you log anything? Well, there are solutions out there that don't log these systems, and what we don't want is for someone who has access to Rubrik to be restoring data or putting data in various places and not have any of that paper trail, right? You need to, from a compliance standpoint, ensure that any systems that are being used around your data, are obviously being logged pretty clearly and granularly. So if I do one click refresh here, I believe that data should be just about done. Yep, recover successful. 3 files. It was only about 5.4 megs. Took, 10 seconds to do. This is the recovery process pretty much for anything you're going to recover using Rubrik and 365. The screens may change a little in terms of where you can recover to or what you're recovering, because the data is different across applications. But that overall workflow that I showed you of find the data, select it, recover it, it's the same, not just in 365, but across the Rubrik kind of product suite. Most of that workflow is essentially the same, which is pretty cool, right? So I'll let me come back here. That's sort of the high level overview. Like Matt was saying, it's kind of hard. The demo isn't the most terribly interesting thing. I always tell folks a lot of times, because it is just dead simple. But this is, the product that we've brought to market alongside of Microsoft, right? We've co-engineered with them. And the last thing I'll add on here is, because of that co-engineering work, the biggest value add that we're providing to our customers here is API management. We've got a very, very deep understanding of the throttling that happens with the Microsoft APIs, the limitations that are there. And so in all of that automation that we've built into the platform, we know those constraints, and we can ensure that we're not going to have a performance impact by trying to go above and beyond what the APIs are actually going to allow you to do, right? And I know it sounds simple, but that is such a huge component to what we do. And it matters from a backup performance standpoint and from a recovery standpoint, either individually and mass, for sure.
Jeff,
So
do
I
you
think
know if anything on the back end has
Please, go
changed
ahead.
or been, do you know if anything on the back end has been updated recently in terms of this restore? When I used to go through this exercise and show someone, it would take, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds to get a restore. And like you just said, took 10 seconds. In my last few demonstrations, it's been much fast. I know they're using Kubernetes on the back end to spin up containers. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, I'm surprising even myself when I'm doing some of these restore tests.
I mean, we meet with the application product managers at Microsoft, weekly, pretty much. And that helps us. Rodney, I saw you come off mute. Did you have something specific you wanted to add there?
Sure. So I've been working for the last couple of months with Rubrik to really dial in and optimize their API calls. So there are fewer calls. Fewer calls means faster, right? You're not having this contention and checking. So yes, we've been working very closely with Rubrik to get a lot tighter on those API calls and really optimize to just adjust the traffic that needs to be there to make this happen.
Yeah, and not picking on Microsoft, but a lot of times when I think cloud and operations, it's not, usually you submit an operation. I'm in Azure and I'm creating something, and then you just watch the little guy spinning and you're looking for status updates. We're not used to instant feedback or gratification so much. And yet I've been very impressed recently with how quick those test restores have been going, which bodes well for, oh, shoot, I need to restore mass amounts of data. Let's get it going now.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. So, folks, look, I saw that there were questions, and if any of those again were not answered, during this session, we're absolutely going to follow up and make sure that you get that information. The only other thing I'll add is, please feel free to reach out if you're interested in kicking off a trial with, us and IVOXY. We provide a free trial that's on our website. You can actually I'll bring it up here real quick for anyone else who's still on. But if you go to our website, reach out to your IVOXY rep or whatever it may be. But you can come here, start a free trial, and we'll work with you. We'll set up some working sessions. We'll help ensure that it gets deployed properly. We'll help walk you through SLAs and recoveries and all that goodness. But we provide these free trials for 2 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on how big your organization is, how much you need to do. But this is super. It's really one of those kind of rare instances where this is a fairly substantial risk for a lot of our customers, given the reliance on 365 today. But to Matt's point, like, the solution to it is it's not going to take you 9 months to go get this thing up and running and to have everything set and to have recoverability there. This does not take that long. It's very simple and easy to deploy and manage.
And
so I always encourage people go try it.
It says a lot also that there's the free trial, it's that easy of a thing. It's not on-premise hardware being delivered and give me some IP so we can configure this. And now we have to define what are we testing this POC against? What criteria do we need to pay? It's like, hey, let's set this up. It doesn't change your mail flow at all. It's simply a read only, pull out, let's protect the data and show you how simple it is. And to that point, I don't like to talk price. I don't make commission, nothing like this, but it's also incredibly modestly affordable and priced, I think. I just feel like a lot of people also only think it's about email. And to one of our earlier poll questions, at IVOXY, we migrated all of our file shares we leverage OneDrive, right? But a lot of people think OneDrive is a thing. If you're in an organization, chances are you're using a SharePoint document library. Access 100%. With OneDrive, that right there that is now protected, versioned everything. And I can sleep better at night because I'm in charge of making sure that's sorted out at IVOXY. And I'm not IVOXY ops, right? We don't have an ops staff. So we need to make sure that the tools that we leverage are good and don't need to add a lot of overhead and time to manage. So, and that's exactly
no PhDs to run a Rubrik product for sure.
Correct. Jeff, we have a question from John. John, thank you. Can the free trial be converted to there's nothing to change, right? You don't have to tear it down and reset it up if you have a trial and then want to go.
We do have customers who will do that. They'll go right from a trial instance to converting it into a production instance. I'd say the only hiccups we ever run into are just, aligning timelines with, purchasing processes and paper processes and
Sure.
vendor onboarding, that kind of stuff.
And Joe had a question about backing up the settings in Exchange regarding configuration or just end user data. And I'm not sure if I completely understand the question. Maybe Jeff, you nodded a little bit, if you might have a better understanding of exactly what they might be talking about.
Yeah, we'd probably need to dive in that a little deeper to understand what exact settings they or configurations they're looking to ensure. What I can say is when we do backup Exchange data, we do keep in a lot of that hierarchy in mind, just from a recovery standpoint, to ensure that
disty lists and groups, things like that.
I believe so. Yeah, I'd have to go check to make sure that those are all covered. But I do believe if distribution lists are not covered today, I can tell you that they are on the roadmap, because this came up in a conversation like last week. So.
Yeah, I really enjoy what used to be called Polaris Rubrik Security Cloud, in that what they protect now, it's going to look so far different. That list is just going to continue to get longer in terms of specific Azure target. I know we're not talking Azure right now, really, in terms of a native cloud protection, but all of those things, Azure VMs, great right now. SQL managed instances, great right now. I'm excited for all the more, as people start to use microservices, Rubrik's going to be on the forefront of that as well. So yeah.
100%. Yeah, I love it. Well, team, hey, I really appreciate everyone's time today. And again, if there's any questions, you know where to find all of us, and there's recording. Everyone's going to get the deck, the recording, all that good stuff. And, please, the proof is in the pudding. If there's any interest here at all, I always say, go try it out. We'll help you try it out for sure.
And I can echo that. Jeff, thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your information. Fantastic job. Please pass along my thanks to Rodney as well. I know we had to jump. And everybody who attended, thank you very much. Most of all, if you've got questions, reach out to myself. IVOXY account manager. My email's m@ivoxy.com, matt.yeti, whatever. Happy to answer any further questions. Jeff, again, thank you very much. And thanks everybody for attending. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Bye now.